Chapter 9. The United States Postal Service has a motto. The motto is, neither rain nor sleet nor driving snow shall halt the delivery of the mails. All this means is that even when the weather is nasty and your mail person wants to stay inside and enjoy a cup of cocoa, he or she has to bundle up and go outside and deliver your mail anyway. The United States Postal Service does not think that icy storms should interfere with its duties. The Baudelaire orphans were distressed to learn that the fickle fairy had no such policy. Violet, Klaus, and Sunny had made their way down the hill with much difficulty. The storm was rising, and the children could tell that the wind and the rain wanted nothing more than to grab them and throw them into the raging waters of Lake Lachrymose. Violet and Sunny hadn't had the time to grab their coats as they escaped their house, so all three children took turns wearing Klaus's coat as they stumbled along the flooding road. Once or twice a car drove by, and the Baudelaires had to scurry into the muddy bushes and hide in case Captain Sham was coming to retrieve them. When they finally reached Damocles' dock, their teeth were chattering and their feet were so cold they could scarcely feel their toes. And the sight of the closed sign in the window of the fickle fairy ticket booth was just about more than they could stand. "It's closed!" Klaus cried, his voice rising with despair in order to be heard over Hurricane Herman. "How will we get to Curdle Cave now?" "We'll have to wait until it opens," Violet replied. "But it won't open until the storm is past," Klaus pointed out. "And by then, Captain Sham will find us and take us far away. We have to get to Aunt Josephine as soon as possible." "I don't know how we can," Violet said, shivering. "The atlas says that the cave is all the way across the lake, and we can't swim all that way in this weather." "Entro!" Sunny shrieked, which meant something along the lines of, "And we don't have enough time to walk around the lake either." "There must be other boats on this lake," Klaus said. "Besides the ferry, motorboats or fishing boats or..." He trailed off, and his eyes met those of his sisters. All three orphans were thinking the same thing. "Or sailboats," Violet finished for him. "Captain Sham's sailboat rentals. He said it was right on Damocles' dock." The Baudelaires stood under the awning of the ticket booth and looked down at the far end of the deserted dock, where they could see a metal gate that was very tall and had glistening spikes on the top of it. Hanging over the metal gate was a sign with some words they couldn't read, and next to the sign there was a small shack, scarcely visible in the rain, with a flickering light in the window. The children looked at it with dread in their hearts. Walking into Captain Sham's sailboat rentals in order to find Aunt Josephine would feel like walking into a lion's den in order to escape from a lion. "We can't go there," Klaus said. "We have to," Violet said. "We know Captain Sham isn't there because he's either on his way to Aunt Josephine's house or so the anxious clown. But whoever is there," Klaus said, pointing to the flickering light, "won't let us rent a sailboat. They won't know we're the Baudelaires," Violet replied. "We'll tell whoever it is that we're the Jones children and that we want to go for a sail." "In the middle of a hurricane?" Klaus replied. "They won't believe that." "They'll have to," Violet said resolutely, a word which here means as if she believed it, even though she wasn't so sure. And she led her siblings toward the shack. Klaus clasped the atlas close to his chest, and Sunny, whose turn it was for Klaus's coat, clutched it around herself, and soon the Baudelaires were shivering underneath the sign that read, "Captain Sham's Sailboat Rentals. Every boat has its own sail." But the tall metal gate was locked up tight, and the Baudelaires paused there, anxious about going inside the shack. "Let's take a look," Klaus whispered, pointing to a window, but it was too high for him or Sunny to use. Standing on tiptoe, Violet peered into the window of the shack, and with one glance, she knew there was no way they could rent a sailboat. The shack was very small, with only room for a small desk and a single light bulb, which was giving off the flickering light. But at the desk, asleep in a chair, was a person so massive that it looked like an enormous blob was in the shack, snoring away with a bottle of beer in one hand and a ring of keys in the other. As the person snored, the bottle shook, the keys jangled, and the door of the shack creaked open an inch or two. But although those noises were quite spooky, they weren't what frightened Violet. What frightened Violet was that you couldn't tell if this person was a man or a woman. There aren't very many people like that in the world, and Violet knew which one this was. Perhaps you have forgotten about Count Olaf's evil comrades, where the Baudelaires had seen them in the flesh. Lots of flesh in Miss Comrade's case, and remembered all of them in gruesome detail. These people were rude, and they were sneaky, and they did whatever Count Olaf, or in this case Captain Sham, told them to do, and the orphans never knew when they would turn up. And now, one had turned up right there in the shack, dangerous, treacherous, and snoring. Violet's face must have shown her disappointment, because as soon as she took a look, Klaus asked, "What's wrong? I mean, besides Hurricane Herman and Josephine faking her own death and Captain Sham coming after us and everything. One of Count Olaf's comrades is in the shack," Violet said. "Which one?" Klaus asked. The one who looks like neither a man nor a woman," Violet replied. Klaus shuddered. "That's the scariest one." "I disagree," Violet said. "I think the bald one is scariest." "Fast," Sunny whispered, which probably meant, "Let's discuss this at another time." "Did he or she see you?" Klaus asked. "No," Violet said. "He or she is asleep, but he or she is holding a ring of keys. We'll need them, I bet, to unlock the gate and get a sailboat." "You mean we're going to steal a sailboat?" Klaus asked. "We have no choice," Violet said. "Stealing, of course, is a crime and a very impolite thing to do, but like most impolite things, it is excusable under certain circumstances. Stealing is not excusable if, for instance, you're in a museum and you decide that a certain painting would look better in your house, and you simply grab the painting and take it there. But if you were very, very hungry and you had no way of obtaining money, it might be excusable to grab the painting, take it to your house, and eat it. We have to get to Cradle Cave as quickly as possible," Violet continued, "and the only way we can do it is to steal a sailboat." "I know that," Klaus said, "but how are we going to get the keys?" "I don't know," Violet admitted. "The door of the shack is creaky, and I'm afraid if we open it any wider, we'll wake him or her up." "You could crawl through the window," Klaus said, "by standing on my shoulders. Sunny could keep watch." "Where is Sunny?" Violet asked nervously. Violet and Klaus looked down at the ground and saw Klaus's coat sitting alone in a little heap. They looked down at the dock, but only saw the Fickle Fairy ticket booth and the foamy waters of the lake, darkening in the gloom of the late afternoon. "She's gone!" Klaus cried. But Violet put a finger to her lips and stood on tiptoe to look in the window again. Sunny was crawling through the open door of the shack, flattening her little body enough so as not to open the door any wider. "She's inside," Violet murmured. "In the shack?" Klaus said in a horrified gasp. "Oh no, we have to stop her." "She's crawling very slowly toward that person," Violet said, afraid even to blink. "We promised our parents we'd take care of her," Klaus said. "We can't let her do this." "She's reaching toward the key ring," Violet said breathlessly. "She's gently prying it loose from the person's hand." "Don't tell me any more," Klaus said, as a bolt of lightning streaked across the sky. "No, do tell me. What is happening?" "She has the keys," Violet said. "She's putting them in her mouth to hold them. She's crawling back toward the door. She's flattening herself and crawling through." "She's made it," Klaus said in amazement. Sunny came crawling triumphantly toward the orphans, the keys in her mouth. "Violet, she made it," Klaus said, giving Sunny a hug as a huge boom of thunder echoed across the sky. Violet smiled down at Sunny, but stopped smiling when she looked back into the shack. The thunder had awoken Count Olaf's comrade, and Violet watched in dismay as the person looked at its empty hand where the key ring had been, and then down on the floor where Sunny had left little crawl prints of rainwater, and then up to the window and right into Violet's eyes. "She's awake!" Violet shrieked. "He's awake! It's awake! Hurry, Klaus! Open the gate, and I'll try to distract it." Without another word, Klaus took the key ring from Sunny's mouth and hurried to the tall metal gate. There were 3 keys in the ring, a skinny one, a thick one, and one with teeth as jagged as the glistening spikes hanging over the children. He put the atlas down on the ground and began to try the skinny key in the lock just as Count Olaf's comrade came lumbering out of the shack. Her heart in her throat, Violet stood in front of the creature and gave it a fake smile. Good afternoon, she said, not knowing whether to add sir or madam. I seem to have gotten lost on this dock. Could you tell me the way to the Figgle Ferry? Count Olaf's comrade did not answer, but kept shuffling toward the orphans. The skinny key fit into the lock but didn't budge, and Klaus tried the thick one. I'm sorry, Violet said. I didn't hear you. Could you tell me? Without a word, the mountainous person grabbed Violet by the hair, and with one swing of its arm lifted her up over its smelly shoulder the way you might carry a backpack. Klaus couldn't get a thick key to fit in the lock and tried the jagged one, just as the person scooped up Sunny with his other hand and held her up the way you might hold an ice cream cone. Klaus! Violet screamed. Klaus! The jagged key wouldn't fit in the lock either. Klaus, in frustration, shook the metal gate. Violet was kicking the creature from behind, and Sunny was biting its wrists, but the person was so... Brobdingnagian, a word which here means unbelievably husky, that the children were causing it minimal pain, a phrase which here means no pain at all. Count Olaf's comrade lumbered toward Klaus, holding the other two orphans in its grasp. In desperation, Klaus tried the skinny key again in the lock, and to its surprise and relief, it turned and the tall metal gate swung open. Just a few feet away were 6 sailboats tied to the end of the dock with thick rope, sailboats that could take them to Aunt Josephine. But Klaus was too late. He felt something grab the back of his shirt, and he was lifted up in the air. Something slimy began running down his back, and Klaus realized with horror that the person was holding him in his or her mouth. Put me down! Klaus screamed. Put me down! Put me down! Violet yelled. Put me down! Potterish! Sunny shrieked. Potterish! But the lumbering creature had no concern for the wishes of the Baudelaire orphans. With great sloppy steps, it turned itself around and began to carry the youngsters back toward the shack. The children heard the gloppy sound of its chubby feet sloshing through the rain. Gumsh, 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 gumsh. But then, instead of a gumsh, there was a skittle-wat as the person stepped on Aunt Josephine's atlas, which slipped from under its feet. Count Olaf's comrade waved its arms to keep its balance, dropping Violet and Sunny, and then fell to the ground, opening its mouth in surprise and dropping Klaus. The orphans, being in reasonably good physical shape, got to their feet much more quickly than this despicable creature and ran through the open gate to the nearest sailboat. The creature struggled to right itself and chased them, but Sunny had already bitten the rope that tied the boat to the dock. By the time the creature reached the spiky metal gate, the orphans were already on the stormy waters of Lake Lachrymose. In the dim light of the late afternoon, Klaus wiped the grime of the creature's foot off the cover of the atlas and began to read it. Aunt Josephine's book of maps had saved them once, and showing them the location of Curdle Cave, and now it had saved them again.